everyone, welcome back. I hope you're all set up. I'm really excited to paint with you today. I wish we were doing it in person, but it is what it is and we're going to make the best of what it is. Anyway, if you're all ready to start, I'm ready to get you going. Okay, now you can see I have here in front of me the finished picture, or at least as far as I've taken it at this point. And maybe later we'll add some white birch into it. So let's get started. Starting with your blank canvas, you're going to measure down the 13 inches. It's approximately 1/3. We just don't want to go across right smack in the middle. If you've got a canvas that is smaller than this or larger than this, just think of it in thirds and mark it off in thirds. We're going to put a little pencil mark, and then you're going to put your tape across nope, don't listen to me. You're going to put your tape across on the bottom of that pencil line. When you put your tape across, take your finger and run it back and forth across this so you know it's well adhered, because that's where we don't want the paint to seep underneath. So there, that's it for getting your canvas ready. The next is you're going to get your paint ready. I started with a pink, a white, a navy blue, and a black. Now, if these are brand new paints, you're just going to take them and give them a really good shake. The reason you're going to shake them is if they've been sitting on a shelf or in transport for some time, they might have separated. And on the top of them, there's this little oily stuff, for better word. And basically, I think what it is a type of antifreeze. It's to keep the paint from freezing, although if you do leave it out in the cold, it will freeze, and then it is no good. So give it a good shake, each one of them, to make sure you've got all that mixed in really, really well. And then I've got a plate here, and I'm going to put, probably, I was going to say a toonie's worth, but you won't, with your dark blue, put out not quite as much on your second puddle, and then a little bit on your, and then I'm going to put some more out here. This blue is going to stay exactly the color it is. This blue is probably maybe half and half, and this one is mainly white. And on this one, you're putting a drip, I mean just a drip of black. Now don't use your bristle brush, your good bristle brushes. You're just going to take a palette knife or an old chopstick or something other than the bristles of your brush, and just mix your paints up. If you've already got 3 shades of blue, you can skip this part. And then in this one, we're going to go even lighter. So basically you want a dark blue, a light blue, and then for the last one, clean off whatever you're mixing with. And then for this one, I'm mixing. And to tell you the truth, we need more of that. And again, just a drop. If you put too much black in it, see, just one little drip. If you put too much black in it, then it gets really dark too quick. It's better to put one drip at a time and mix it and see if you need it darker. But that's pretty good. That's our first mix. And over on our second plate, I've got a cotton candy pink here, and I find it a bit strong. You may find it just perfect. I've put white in mine to soften it down. There. Okay, we're ready to start. Getting paint on a canvas. I'm going to start with my blue, and I'm starting with my basting brush, and I've used this one for quite a while, so most of my bristles are out. Quite frequently it does shed some bristles, and I keep a watch for that. But now I like to work with a damp brush, and I mean damp. So you're going to make sure you lay it down on your old towel or paper towels beside you and let as much water can come out as possible. And now we're going to get started. I want you to think from this green line up, I want you to think about just visually kind of thinking of it in quarters. And if you need to, you can just take a pencil and mark quarters. Just a little tick out here. So we're going to start with our pink, and you're going to get a good amount on your brush. I'm not being chintzy with it. I'm going right for it. You're going to start right down here at this bottom line, and you're going to just paint back and forth across. You're going to come up to about the first quarter. Make sure you get that well covered. And it's going to kind of come out a little striated with this brush. Now I want you to keep coming. I want you to come up through the next quarter until your brush is practically empty of paint. Now I'll come back and just give it. Now before this dries, and without cleaning your brush, I want you to go in and I want you to scoop up the lightest blue. And you're going to start down at this quarter mark, and you're going to start again. And you're going to come up to about the halfway point. And lightly bring a little of that blue down through your pink. And I'm just feather light with this brush. And this takes a little bit of time to get this feel for how light you want to go. Now keep coming up with this one until just about all the paint is off your brush and come up to the 3/4 mark. And as I said, this doesn't have to be exact. Just kind of smooth your paint out. Get your edges. You got time. As long as your paint is still wet, you got time to work with it. As soon as the gloss starts to go off the paint, you need to stop working with it because then it just kind of lifts. Now we're going to go into the medium shade of blue, and as you see, it's fairly thick on that brush. And about the halfway mark, you're going to start painting again, and you're going to go all the way pretty much as close up as you can. Now, see how it mixes in with the lighter blue as you come back? And I'm just barely tickling the surface with those bristles. There we go. Just keep getting it. Don't worry about those little striae marks coming across. Try and go straight back and forth across. This is just a simple little painting just to get us in the feel of things. Now I'm going to get as much off my brush here as I can. I'll come up. Now I'm going straight back across with the full width of my brush. Now I'm going into my darkest blue. And again, nice, fairly thick on the brush. And in the last quarter, I'm putting the darker blue. And see how it's nicely mixing with that blue underneath? Because that paint hasn't had time to dry yet. If that paint was dried, we couldn't do this. It would just be lifting and making a terrible mess. Just tickle it in, just blend it into the other color. Get your edges. That's where I have a tendency to leave my white marks easier. And I might just go in and get just across the top just to bring a darker blue in there. So in rates, oh, I got a drip in there. Right down here, I have a drip. So I'm just going to lightly feather that in. I'm barely touching, and it's just bringing some more of the color through. And that's it for your sky. Now is the time that you can actually stop this video, rewind it, that's probably the wrong word to use, but back up on it, watch this whole segment again as many times as you need to until you feel comfortable with this. Your brush, you don't have to hold it tight, you're just letting it feather back and forth across your work, letting those uneven, jaggedy parts of your brush just kind of blend everything together. It's just a simple, easy, don't take it too serious, don't get tied up in it, just go with the flow. Okay, so if you've backed this up a few times and you've got your sky in, we're ready to move ahead at this point. Now, we've been using our brush back and forth in this direction. Now we're going to use our brush, and I'm not even cleaning the brush, I'm just moving forward, and I'm going to grab a piece of paper here just to demonstrate. I'm going to go into my dark blue and just dab my brush in. And I'm using it in this direction. I'm doing this with it, okay? I'm not doing it this way. I'm doing it on the opposite way. So let me show you what I'm talking about. So I'm going into my dark blue, the navy blue that has no black in it. And I'm just going to start here, just above the tape, and I'm just dibble-dabbling. Nothing fancy. Get more blue on, and I'm going to come across from this way. And I'm going to meet again. Make it uneven, just like a tree line. Would never be even. Now I'm going to go into that dark blue, the blue where I put just a bit of black on. And again, just dabbing in. It's not as thick on your brush as it was when I started doing that, but it's thick. And just right over top. Don't quite go up all the way and cover your the blue that you just put in. Just go over the top a bit and leave a little of that peeking up. Can you see how that is? How this only comes this far and the other blue is coming up higher? You just want to make sure you don't have any spaces left. You want it all covered in right down to your tape. And at that point, let me just get this straight so you can see it. At this point, you're actually going to stop, turn off the recording, and you're going to let this totally dry. So once it's totally dry, I'll be back and we'll continue on to the bottom part of the piece. See you shortly. Oh, and don't forget, I forgot the most important part, don't forget to get yourself a nice, cool drink of your choice, and I'll see you back here shortly. Welcome back, everyone. I hope your top portion of your painting went well. And now it needs to be thoroughly dry before we move on. You can either blow it with a hair dryer and get it nice and dry. What I've been doing over this hot weather is just sitting it on a bit of a tilt in front of a fan, letting the air from the fan dry it. But it needs to be, especially your tree line here, needs to be thoroughly dry before we move forward. So grab yourself a drink and we'll get moving forward. So now we're going to take the green tape and we're going to actually protect the top. You're now going to put this tape right across the bottom of your tree line so that we don't get any paint moving up into that tree line. Now again, run your fingers back and forth right across the bottom of this. The top's not that important, the bottom is. And now you've got your tape there. And we're actually now just going to reverse what we did earlier. You're going to go in and you're going to get some nice pink. Get that nice and loaded. And you're just going to start again and just back and forth. You can go right over that paint a little, tape a little bit. Just work yourself down. We think in thirds here. We don't have as much space as we did in the top, so kind of think in thirds. So now I'm going to just work my brush down and get most of the paint out of it. Scooping up your light blue, starting again, get it nice and across here. Now I'm going to kind of lightly bring it up into your pink. Just tickle it across the, and then go down. Make sure you get your edges. Now I'm going into my medium blue and I'm going to do the same thing. Just come right here across the bottom and I'm going to tickle it into the light blue. You can actually get just a little. I've just barely got a little extra on there, and you can just tickle it in as long as your paint is still wet. If you take a long time to do this and your paint is starting to dry, it's hard to get that in. Now I'm going to go into my dark blue just a little, and I'm just going to, again, the last paint you work with still has to be wet. And as you notice, I'm not scooping into the paint quite as thick down here as I did the first for the top portion, just because I had more space. And you can't see it, but I have lost a bristle on my brush. It's in the paint. I'm taking my brush, I'm picking it up. It's making me angry. Did I get it out? There. And now I will just put that back nice and straight. And there, we've got the water in. Now at this point, again, we have to let this dry completely. And then we'll come back and we'll do the shadows on the water. And we'll do some weeds and cattails coming up from the bottom. But we have to let this thoroughly dry. So make sure you get your paintbrush completely clean. Don't leave the paint to dry in it. I'll just set this out and give you a little. I like to use these plates for two reasons. I'm lazy and I like to be able to have my paint in them. I can put another I can put another plate right on top of it, use a little clip, and slide it right inside a Ziploc bag. This paint will keep for about a week. So all that mixed paint that you've got is still in here. When we come back to finish this, we'll just be able to take that lid right off that, take it out of the Ziploc bag, take it out of and it'll still be wet. So you're not wasting any paint that you've already mixed or you've put out, and we're ready to move ahead. Welcome back. Hopefully the bottom portion of your painting is dry and ready to move forward. Leave that green tape on that's across there. We still want to protect the top. This next part, we're going to put a shadow on below the tree line. Your brush is clean. It's damp. It's not dripping, but it's damp. I'm just going to set this aside and grab a piece of paper. Basically, you're going to go in, and do you see how little paint that I actually have on this? You do not want a lot of paint on it. You're actually going to now turn the brush this way. Say this is your tree line, and you're just going to come off the tape that's across there, and you're barely touching. Just going to flick it like this. You could go into a little lighter blue, and again, just flick it. Keep a piece of, you can test this on paper and till you get it. Before that paint dries, we got to make sure that that paint isn't dry, and just lightly, you're going to just lightly, I'm barely touching it, just enough to make that paint. Now it's going to be better on the canvas. So your brush is damp, not dripping, but not dry. You're going into your dark blue. Your bristles are just barely. If you want to, you can just pitter-patter a little bit on the paper, just so you know you're not globby. And then you're going to just bring, see how I'm just bringing a little down. Try and do it, come off your tape, and try and match the height, the length of these strokes to the tree back there. Before it's dry, just give it a slight, you're barely touching it, and you're coming just sideways to give the feel of water. Go back in, pitter-patter a little on the paper, and continue again, coming off the tape, down onto that pink, come across a few inches. Now, just tickling it, just bring us a bit across, just to make it look like, here's my short tree. And you notice I'm using my brush this way, not this way. I'm bringing it sideways, just like the width that I did for my, when I smudged in my trees. Don't go too far. This needs to be wet when you come sideways over it. This does take a little practice, I will admit. This tree's bigger. Don't forget to breathe. There we go. We're just going to come all the way across. This tree's a little taller. Now, if you've got a few places that you feel are a little too sparse, you can let this dry and you can come back in a second time. And there you have it. You could come in with a little darker blue in spots. You could come in with some of the lighter blue. I have a space here that I'm finding is a little sparse, and I'll come back in a bit maybe, and I'll blow this dry completely. And then I'll come back in and I'll touch up some areas that I think need to be just a little more. While that dries, and your brush is still in that paint, this part is fun. Get out another. There we go. To do cattails, you're going to go into that dark blue that I mixed with a little bit of black paint. And again, you're getting a little more paint on your brush this time, but not a lot again. And again, sideways, barely touching. And this is where you're going to want to get the feel of this brush on paper. How much paint do I need on it? How hard do I have to touch it to the canvas? How far up do I want to go? How much do I want to fill in down here? So this is a good time to practice this while your top part is drying. And that's your base for some cattails. I'm going to stick that in my water, and to do my cattails, I'm going to go in to my blue paint with a small round brush. Let's see how Diego gets that so you can see it. It's just a small round brush, and I'm dipping it in the dark paint, and I'm coming down, 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 and then I actually come up just to give a cattail. And I have a finer brush, if you've got a finer brush, just to give it a little. And that's your cattails. You could, if you wanted, come in with that round brush, and you could bring some thicker cattails into it. You could bend some down. Now that little part looks easy when I do it, but I will tell you, it took practice. You're putting a little weight on that brush, so it's spreading out, and you're coming up, up, up to the point of that brush. So when you're coming up to the point of that brush, you're lifting, you're going slowly, you're lifting. I'm almost twisting it in my fingers, going back in, coming down, and lifting, lifting, lifting to the point of that brush. This does take a little practice, and you got to remember, I've been painting for, half my life. That's kind of a scary thing to say. But yes, I've been painting for over half my life. So I'm used to doing those kind of stroke works. They look really easy for me. But if you take the time to play on paper to get this kind of thing, you get an extra little added dimension. Okay. Let's see if mine, while I'll clean my brush here. Diego, can you get a picture of these two water dishes? Now these are professional water dishes, and down in this section of it, it has little ribs in it where I can clean it. And and it helps get the paint off the brushes. You're probably wondering why I have two. I have two because I clean most of the paint when the brush is really dirty. I clean most of it off in this one dish, and then I clean the rest off in the second dish. So this one I think of as my dirty one, and this is my clean one, even though this is getting some discoloration, but your brush is coming out a little cleaner. You'll notice, And for those of you who have painted with me for quite some time, you'll notice that I set up the same way every single time I set up. In my studio at home, this is totally how I've set up. My water dishes sit out there all the time. My palette is right here. Where I dry my brush is always in the very same place. My paints at home are always over to my left-hand side because ignore that, are always over to my right-hand side because I'm right-handed. And so I never have to even think. I can practically dip into my paint, dip into my water dish, my palette, dry my brush without even actually having to look at it. So if you can get into the habit of setting up exactly the same way every time, it'll all become second nature. And you won't be thinking, oh, where's my paint? Oh, it's up here. Oh, this is over here. Oh, I dropped a big glob of something on my paint. So if you can get into the habit of always doing this the same way, then it just becomes second nature. Okay, let's take a peek, see how we are, if I'm dry enough. I'm just going to turn this hairdryer on just for a sec. Okay, now I'm just going to go in and strengthen up any of the areas that I felt were not strong enough. And I'm actually going to dip into just a little bit into the dark blue that I put a drip of black in. And again, just any areas that I feel need strengthening. And don't forget just to come across and give them a little bit of, so that they look like they're rippling in the water. Now, anything that you don't totally understand from this video, I will be back with a Zoom call, and you'll be able to ask me any questions that you want to. So it's not, this is it and we're done. No, we'll be back. I'll answer any questions you need. And you will be able to rewind this recording. That goes to show my age. It's not rewinding. What's it called, Diego?
Well, I say rewind.
Do you? Oh, okay. I know that saying tape is showing my age, so I stopped doing that. Very lightly, not much. Okay. Now I'm not even going to go in and clean my brush. I'm just going to go in and I'm going to get a little more on my brush. And I'm going to start, I always start on my, you notice I've started on the left-hand side and I work across to my right. And I work that way so that I don't go down and into my work because I'm right-handed. If you're left-handed, you're going to be this is going to be set up on your left, and you're going to work from your right side over towards your left. So again, you don't put your arm in any of your work. Now very lightly, and as I say, it's always good to practice on the paper to get the feel of this first. And I'm just giving it a feather touch. Some are short, some are long. And then I'm going to come, and now I'm going to come over to my right. There's no right or wrong to this, and because you're not used to it, you're probably thinking, oh, that's so, you're going to be picking on yourself. Don't do that. Let it dry, step back, and look at it from a distance. We have a tendency to look at our paintings right up close, because we're sitting right here. But you don't want to do that. You want to step back, put your painting upright, and look at it as if it was hanging on a wall in your home at that kind of a distance. When you look at other people's paintings, that's how you look at them. And that's how you need to look at your own, not from this distance and pick out every tiny little thing you don't like. There. And now I'm going to, I think I might strengthen that area a little. And then I'm going to take my round brush and I'm going to come over and think, oh, I think I'll put a cattail here. Think in uneven numbers. 3, 5, 7. It'll look more natural. I got 4 on that side. I think I'll bring a short one down here. And I've kind of zigzagged them up, so I'll... Oh, that one looks a little funny, but oh, sometimes cattails do. Two, 3. Maybe I'll put a short one down here. I'm going to put one down here. Now you can either take this round brush and really roll it out so that you've got a tiny, tiny point on it, and just give yourself a little... This one isn't... It's doing okay, but it's not doing great. Roll it out so it's pointy. But if you've got a smaller fine brush, you can also do this with it. It's just to give that little bit on the top of... There. And then if you want to, you can just come in and do and bring up some other. But as you can see, it doesn't really need it. Okay. Yes, we were done, but we forgot to take our tape off to see the finished product. I want you to take a little bit of white paint and just put a little bit of just plain white paint out. And I have a, where did I put it? Right in here. It's just an inexpensive palette knife with a fairly sharp edge here. Nothing fancy, but if you don't have one of these, an old credit card will work. You're going to go into your white paint so that, and then dibble-dabble it off a bit, and right along where the trees meet the water, just run a little bit of white. You're going to come all the way across there, and not everywhere, and some of them will be a little thicker, some will be finer, some it's not 100%. Remember, water moves at its own. Just take your time. Now, you'll notice I'm not going always right back into that glob of white paint. I'm kind of going where I'm dibble-dabbling it off. And you're straight up and down, and I'm just going to run a bit of white from, just to give a little light coming on the water. Straight across. Now we're done. Almost missed that part. Okay. Now we're completed. You could add white birch trees up here. You could, this is your painting, and you should do exactly what you feel you want to do to make it your own. It doesn't have to be exactly like everybody else's. You could add some extra trees up in here behind. You could put a few little birds flying in the background. You could put a loon and a baby loon down here in the front, or a Canada goose, or an alligator. Whatever you would like. This is your painting. Add to it however you want. And one thing a lot of people get a little nervous about painting, it's like you've got this fresh white canvas and you're really afraid to go on it. And it's just a canvas. And if you don't like it, you can paint over the top of it, give it a sand, use a tack cloth and clean all the dust off, or use a vacuum and clean all the dust off. And if you don't like it, just paint it, sand it, tack it, paint over it again, and you're ready to start fresh. It's just a canvas, and we're just here to have fun. Until our Zoom meeting, thank you, I miss you, and we'll see you in the Zoom.